Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning and a happy Tuesday, gentlemen.
There we go. That's
Good
it.
morning.
Jumping in for our main topic today, we're going back into the content lifecycle management, part 6. We've worked our way around the bases, I guess. Maybe this is like a baseball game. We have all these
Not
different...
really.
Oh?
No, man, because there are not 6 bases. I do know that. So we're past 4, so analogy falls apart.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's like we're working around these, like the image diagram has these little cubey things, and we're like walking our way around the cube. Anyways, from the Microsoft documentation.
Hopefully we'll hit a touchdown.
Yes, exactly. Now you're getting it. Excellent. Score goal unit. So we're stage 5, monitoring and supporting your Power BI published reports. That's the section that we're on right now. So we're going to continue down the content lifecycle management and keep working through that. That's our main topic. But before we do that, we do have some news. Microsoft is promoting a very interesting event, I guess. I haven't really seen a lot of events done in this way. Maybe there's been things like this before in the past, but Microsoft is pushing for a AI hackathon in Fabric. Tommy, do you want to kind of give us a heads up on like what's this all about?
Yeah, so this is the second annual Microsoft Fabric and AI hackathon. And whether you're a Power BI developer, admin, new or seasoned professional, Microsoft wants you to participate in this Microsoft Learn Challenge. Registration, I believe, is now open. Registration opens actually yesterday. So registration opens today. Submissions start on September 24th, and all the rules and settings, they're giving away about 10 grand in prizes total, with the first prize getting 2,500. But really, it's about showcasing your skills, learning something new. And that's what Microsoft's trying to push, which is great too, because I think a lot of things in Fabric, especially when it comes to AI, it's what is the realm of the possible. And this is going to be a great demonstration of that.
Yes. And as part of the submission deadline, right, there's a 3 to 5 minute video demonstration and a link to the documented repository containing the steps to recreate your solution. So for those who may not know, but this is quite the compressed timeline, right? Ish. Well, actually, it's actually really good for a hackathon. Like, so you have a full month. You have a full month. But if you're not familiar, like usually within organizations, like a lot of orgs I've been part of do hackathons, but they are really compressed timelines, right? Like they call it a hackathon because if, like, for those not familiar, you're working like a lot. Like you're putting tons of like very sleepless nights to pull together an idea. Now, what's fantastic about that is you're diving deep into some particular area to solve some problem, and it's an accelerated, like just all tech, go build a solution kind of thing. And the learning that you come out of there is invaluable. It's a lot of fun, especially if you can find a couple folks to do it with.
If you never had Red Bull, you have now.
You will have by the end, or Monster, whatever.
True statement there.
The latest iteration of that. Energy.
It would be a blast for the three of us to do a hackathon together. I know schedules are so crazy. We just find time to do this.
Yeah.
But man, that'd be a blast. We should rent a place in Door County.
Unfortunately, Tommy, as MVPs, we couldn't win, right? We couldn't get the pay, so like just sorry, not gonna work.
Rent a place in Door County, Wisconsin, in Airbnb. God.
There are also some upskilling opportunities as well in the live Ask Me Anythings as well. So I just want to point out too, there is a number of events, AMA events, in the Microsoft tech community that are coming up as well. So September 17th, October 8th, there are some events that are happening. I guess that's today. The September 17th one is they're doing a video now. But anyways, if you want to get involved and kind of understand more about it, go visit the Microsoft blog page. I'll put the link here in the chat window as well, just in case you want to see. It's also in the description of this video today. But if you want to learn more about the hackathon that Microsoft's putting on, check out the chat window or our description. There'll be more content there as well. All right. With that, I don't have any other major announcements other than jumping over to our main topic for today. So, main topic for today is unless you guys had anything else, I didn't want to push too fast.
I don't know what's going on next week.
Next week is a big event.
Oh, there is. Oh,
True.
do tell.
Really?
What big event is that, Mike?
Next week is the Microsoft Fabric Conference in Europe, which will be a collection of Microsoft and community speakers collecting in Stockholm, Sweden, I believe. And there we'll have the version of the Fabric Conference over in Europe side of things. So I'll be helping out with a Fabric 101. I'll be helping to proctor an event inside the pre-conference. So I'll be there Tuesday, helping in the pre-con, getting everyone started with Fabric and getting familiar with the materials and walking through everything, providing assistance there. And then I'll be doing a speaking session throughout the week, and I'll be helping out at the volunteer area as well. So if you are not going, you should go see if there's any room left. Go get some tickets, I guess. Probably the wheels have set in motion. You're probably not going to be like, oh, well, I have nothing to do this next week. I'm just going to leave work and go to a conference. But hope to see you there if you're going to be coming to the Fabric Conference in Stockholm. Looking forward to the event. Should be very exciting.
Have fun, Mike.
If you happen not to be in Sweden, by the way, kudos. I'm sure you're going to have an awesome time speaking. You got to see Mike DiCarlo speak. It's a treat if you're in the area.
I mean, we'd love to have you on our session.
DiCarlo, yeah, DiCarlo.
Yeah, if we keep saying Mike DiCarlo, his last name is gonna change to DiCarlo
legally.
For everybody. Hey, Mike DiCarlo. So what I'm saying is, let's keep going.
Yes, DiCarlo Solutions.
Yeah.
It's funny that you guys mentioned this because the person who wrote the blog post for Microsoft Fabric and AI Learning Hackathon is actually Paul DiCarlo.
Oh, really?
No,
he's actually a
your
DiCarlo.
brother, your cousin.
He's my cousin, and believe it or not, we kind of look similar. So the Italian genes run thick, I guess. Anyways, it's very funny.
Have a long history, yeah.
The DiCarlos have a long history, so we probably trace back to some ancient root where we were chiseling on stone together, and his family and my family was maybe somehow related.
Something with a bar chart.
Why do I all of a sudden feel like somewhere in your family line somebody was like, we gotta drop the duh.
You know what?
We gotta Americanize and be like Carlo, and that's it.
I don't know what happened, but I don't know a lot about my family history, but I believe that happened when my great grandparents came over on the boat over from Italy. So I think names were getting changed, but I don't have a lot of connection to my early part of my family, so I don't really know a history of our family, how that changed. But my assumption is maybe something may have changed on the way over here to America when we settled here.
Back in the day, you'd usually drop the O part, the vowel, saying,
yeah,
we're Carl, we're DiCarl now.
Maybe we were hiding from something. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Maybe we had a track record.
There's another event coming up, Mike, you just told me about, if you happen not to be in Sweden.
That's true.
So do you want to, we could bring that
I don't know what you're talking about, but go ahead.
Microsoft Ignite.
Oh yeah, Microsoft Ignite. Sorry, that other event. There's another event coming out. That's Microsoft Ignite. It will be in our backyard. Tommy's backyard than mine. It will be in Chicago. So the Ignite event is going to be in Chicago. So I'm going to also be attending that one as well, helping out there as much as I can. So come visit us if you don't want to travel overseas. Come to Chicago. We will have the Microsoft Ignite event there. I'm pretty sure Microsoft will push out more new announcements around Fabric and things they're working on. So that'll be very exciting to see that event as well.
I lacked intelligence on this one because you're like, hey, are you going? I'm like, I don't think I can fly. You're like, you don't have to, man.
It's like walk over to it, Tommy. It's literally
like in your
so I will probably be there helping for a few of the days. I know there's some other things going on, but yeah, if it's in Chicago, I'm going. So
that's what I said, Tommy. You gotta pay attention to these things. You gotta come out and join us. So anyways, you want to come out and hopefully see Tommy and I in Chicago, come out and see us at inside the Microsoft Ignite. It would be a lot of fun.
You'll find me at the deli at the least.
There we go. Tommy will be
bumming around.
He'll just have a huge pastrami, just to be chomping on it like it's
outside the building. Yeah.
Yeah, just outside the building. Tommy, you want to come in and visit us? No, I'm eating meat.
I'm actually pretty good. Yeah.
I'm just gonna hang out here. Awesome, super fun. Should be an enjoyable event. All right, with that, then now I think we're ready to transition over to the actual topic for today, which is the the next section of implementation, which is how to support and monitor your Power BI data sets. What happens there? What options do we have in the monitoring area? So I want to give us a bit of an overview of support and monitoring this article, and then we'll jump in and maybe talk about certain sections on it.
I love to support and monitor this article, Mike, as you said. So a few things. Yeah, this is our part 6. We're rounding the bases. And we've talked about planning, designing content, developing and managing content. You can find all of our previous episodes on our content lifecycle management series. They've all been on odd numbers and every other Tuesday. So make sure to listen to the other ones. And today we're really focused on part of that lifecycle management is the importance of support monitoring. How do we support consumers? And also, how do we monitor the content that's out there? This is one that I would argue has the least amount of love out of everything that we've discussed today and the least amount of attention. So what are some of the best practices out there? What have we seen? And in the world of Fabric, how does this look? And I think that's a good place to start.
It is a good place. I don't know if it's going to end with the least amount of love out of all of these, but so far, yes, I would agree with you.
I think the love you're saying is, how much tooling Microsoft has provided or how easy they have made it for you to understand what content you've made and how often it's being used. Is that kind of maybe what you're talking about? Is like the how to get your hands on the data or the information, or are you talking about no one's just talking about it?
Yeah, funny enough, I meant my idea of love is the amount of processes around it. A lot of teams and organizations that I see actually devote the time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, see, that's what I was picking up where you're putting down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm thinking about a little bit more. So I think monitoring and supporting is somewhat of a factor, and I think it's probably weaker. But I think the weakest thing is our next content lifecycle management talk, which is how to retire and archive content, because I don't think anyone does that. So
that's what
I think that's the part where I'm like, no one is thinking that way at this point, or how do we start killing content that's out there? But I would also agree, in order to be able to turn off, retire, sunset things, you need to have substantial data, to at least some data, to support the decision one way or the other. So, I mean, I would agree with you, Tommy. Monitoring and supporting is not very well thought of. And I think this is Microsoft gives you some tooling to do this, but I think in reality, this is a lot of people and process building in your organization on how to get this to work. And so I think there's not a lot of governance or thought put to when we publish something, how do we know it is a success?
Success is one thing. The other interesting point that I think we'll get to at some point in time here is if we're talking about when planning to deploy something or deploy solutions, I think this is the stage that people don't think about in terms of the volume of support needs, right? Or time involved in this that's going to take up in this step. Right. And it's just not part of the plan. And if anything, at the end of this conversation, probably one of my closing points is make sure it's part of your plan and your capacity planning for it. Right. Because it's easy as a team to just be in build mode and launch and then think you can go into build mode and launch again with like sets of projects or reports with the same levels of effort, meaning if I have 80% capacity, it's all going towards development. In the next cycle, it's 80% capacity, all going towards development. Next cycle, it's 80%. No, right? It's now 70% because 10% is support and monitoring of previous solutions, or and it's not just what's going on with the reports, right? Like this article is outlining there's user support, there's platform, there's like all the things that go along with the solutions that we're building within Fabric.
Yeah, and I think there's a good indication of the health of your data culture on the amount of time that your organization or your team spends on the support monitor. Because
100%.
Honestly, if you're in an unhealthy one, it's the churn and burn. We got to show the fruits of what we're doing. So we're going to, how many reports did we build? But a healthy data culture understands that the following areas that, you don't see the fruits of what you're doing because it's not as apparent. You're not making major updates, but there's a underlying importance on what are we doing to get people to adopt these new reports? it's not just adopting Power BI. There's that micro area of, we built a new report. Let's get people familiar, that cognitive load, and understanding that, and also what's out there and what are we doing for that, and spending good time, quality time on this, not the majority of your time, but this is important from a data culture.
I thought you were going in a different direction with that, because in a turn and burn culture, or in one where you're not doing a lot of the steps we've talked about previously, you're not putting out a good product. And the result of that is you are going to spend more time in this sport realm because you're going to have more bugs. You're going to have more problems to fix.
Okay, so and honestly, both of these are very valid points, and they make a ton of sense. Interestingly, go ahead.
I want to jump into some of the article pieces. My initial reaction to the article is there's a lot of notes and warnings right up at the beginning. So there's, you have the image. Here's where we're on stage 5. Immediately, there's a huge note says, for an overview of content lifecycle management, read these other articles. One, I would highly recommend reading these other articles. What is the adoption roadmap? How do you handle user support? How do you Power BI implement auditing and monitoring? How do you BI solution planning, deploy, support, and monitor, migrate Power BI from other solutions into Power BI? These are great topics for you just to kind of understand. So if you haven't read those articles, I would highly recommend going to read them, because it will also form some opinions around what is possible, what we can do with monitoring. So I highly recommend those notes as well. But I really resonated with their first green tip in this list of documentation that says, if you expect your data and Power BI environment to thrive, please don't underestimate how important it is to start support above and beyond just production environments. So non-development, non-testing environments, supporting the broader part of your organization with your building content. So one of the things I'm really passionate about here is Power BI, or Fabric now, gives us the ability to delegate responsibility to other teams. And I think a lot of organizations don't have a culture or don't have process in place where we can hand other team members or provide a report, an app, a data set, a table. These are the different thresholds by which we're able to give people access to the information and the data. We don't have a good culture yet in these companies, or that I've observed, where it's easy for us to transition responsibility from one person to another with this self-service or in these BI experiences. So you have to decide what that looks like for your organization. And then you have to build process around it and kind of almost enforce it of, look, if you want more access to higher levels of data, and what I mean by that is, I'm not just going to build you a report, I'm going to build you a semantic model, and you can consume that. We have to be okay with the report builder consuming that semantic model and building something that's they're responsible for. So having those kind of processes in place, I think, are incredibly important. And monitoring and supporting this is pivotal to helping users build quality content so you don't kill your data models. If you have a large data model and people are building bad measures against it, you're going to have to address that. That's a problem you're going to have to address. So you have to be able to monitor and know when those things are happening to then provide that support back to that team or person and help them find a better way of making the measure or building the report pages. So I really, really like this article, but I think it's going to focus a lot on the people and the processes you're going to use to build out your Power BI environment.
I don't disagree with you. I think the point that you're stressing here that I think is key is, even for organizations that have created support and monitoring for Power BI solutions, I think what you're poking at, Mike, is Fabric support and monitoring is much bigger than just what we had to do in Power BI from an artifacts and or like, because you're introducing the whole data pipeline. And who owns those different artifacts, or what am I building for teams, and what do I need to go support? And that opens up a whole slew of other things you, as a centralized team or a builder of certain things, needs to understand is going to be part of your workload going forward.
And I think to both your points, it's important to stress the support models or the approaches on if you're doing the self-service for creators and for consumers. Each of them needed to be devoted, and I think need to have special attention on the type and the people involved. For me, I would not say I would focus first on the consumers, but I'll say I have a very special place in my heart for consumer-based support because that's your feedback. That's your audience first. And if they are not taking to it, kind of the whole model breaks in a way. So is so important on that model. I think we could probably focus here. I'm just thinking about what stage we're in terms of, is this a first time we're introducing our support, or is the car already running at this point?
Oh God.
So that might be a parking lot question. Yeah.
No, I mean, poke the bear right off the bat, right? Like, I mean, you can't, regardless of. Okay, lots of thoughts. Are we talking about creators or consumers? Are we supporting consumers? Yeah. Right? Like if you're deploying solutions into the ecosystem, I think that subset of articles that Mike addressed right in the beginning is also part of the conversation, right? Because users, there is an assumption that organizations find themselves in, or business intelligence people or teams starting out, get in trouble because they don't think about this internal support. And if it falls into that separate article where it's just informally organized, like there is no support structure, it's just you, right? Like that becomes part of your time, and you're going to fall behind, and the organization's not going to understand why. Because the more content you put out there, the more things you have to support, which is why I'm a strong proponent of, you want me to launch stuff? Like there is a formal, organized way in which we support this. Otherwise, we're not doing it. Like we don't support it, right? Like you'll get solutions, but it's minimal support at best. We're not monitoring anything because there are no guarantees I can make you unless you want to formally organize around us having the resources and capacity to do so, right? So like that's where I get stuck really quick, because there's this innate assumption, I think, that we can just keep pumping stuff out without this backlog of work coming back in that requires attention in order for these solutions to be successful, because without that, they don't become successful, right? Because, and I think the article even points it out, you have to have support of some kind, whether or not you want to fight the battle of, formal or not. Otherwise, what are the end users going to do? They're going to find the workaround, which is probably not ideal to the solution that you're trying to build. And that is why it's key when you're launching programs or, pushing out this stuff to a much wider audience, that the proper levels of support be there, be it training, like monitoring what's going on, helping people performance tune, etc. But training and addressing the issues, whether those be technology, in their implementation, or just they don't know how to do something, is key and really important.
You're heading.
My question back to you then around, I like this idea or the topic. So in the middle of the article, it talks about there's two main bullet points that come out. There are two main types of users to consider when you do the support model. Consumer support, people consuming reports, and then content creator support. And I think now if we even talk about Fabric, there is content creation as I'm a report content creator, I'm a semantic model content creator, and now I'm a table builder, like a data engineer creating lakehouse content, right? So the content space of what we can make, that we can share now, is actually much larger now that we have Fabric bolted on here. So I think these points are extremely relevant. My question back to you two is, which do you think comes first? Do you start with the consumer support first in the organization, helping people consume what little content has been made or strategic content has been made first, and then start trying to grow the creator support platform inside your organization? What do you think? Is there a precedence to these things, or do you think it does not matter and you have to do all at once? What do you think?
I think it goes back to what Seth was saying, because it hit a nerve where your support strategy does not come after you've launched things. And if
agree with
that's
that.
the case, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And I think that honestly is what I've seen a ton internally and with clients who are like, well, we already launched things and now we're going to start thinking about how we're going to do support when things are already in the production sphere. And that's usually too late. Because,
but I don't want to intimidate people either.
No. But
I don't want to come into it and like you can't build any content until you have this entire support mechanism rolled out.
Not the entire support, but what is the plan? There's got to be some plan. But to your
agree.
point, like
there's got to be an easy win here somewhere.
There's got to be an easy win. But to your point, if you're going to launch your self-service as part of it, then I think self-service, the content creators come first. But that's why your support strategy has to be part of the whole package. Right. If I'm not doing self-service, or if I know I'm not going to do it at scale, I'm focusing on consumers. That's going to be where my devotion of strategy, process, and time is going to be. But if I know that my launch or whatever the project deployment is has a lot of business users building a lot of things, or that's a critical part of the system, then my first focus is going to be getting them up to speed.
Okay. I'm going to disagree with your.
I agree in part, right? Like and the part I agree with is this has to be part of how you are introducing, deploying content within an organization, and the volumes are part of that.
Mm-hmm.
To answer your question, Mike, and then you can rebut both of us or disagree.
Okay.
I think you support both of them at the same time. Okay. The only difference is I'm not picking or choosing one or the other, because what I'm picking is very targeted audiences only that are only aligned with the largest objectives of the organization, right? Like, because my team is a service provider, right? We're trying to enable the organization to do things, but I can only do that with the capacity that I have to do that with. Right. So that limits the reach that I have across the organization, because I won't publicly go out there and just say we have all these things, because I can't, there's no way I could support that. However, what I do find are the particular individuals that are responsible for key organizational objectives, and I lock in with them. And sometimes those are content creators where I can build content with, or I'm developing a model that they go and build reports on top of, or it's the consumer who really understands data, and we're building a very targeted, insightful report for them that's of key importance. So in both those cases, when I'm introducing those things, I introduce that I will support them. But at the same time, I'm clearly articulating to them that there's a limited amount of capacity in terms of like enhancement, growth, et cetera, on these objects, but we're still doing it.
So I'm going to maybe point out, maybe push a bit more on here. So I understand, Tommy, your emphasis on the creator content area. And Seth, I agree with your point here as well. But I'm going to really push back a little bit and say I kind of disagree. I really think if you look at the number of people trying to consume things from PowerBI.com, I think if you're looking to drive impact in your organization, I think you have to kind of look at it from a lens of, if I have people who are just asking for data, give me the report, build it for me, how many people are going to know how to focus on building really good content that everyone likes to use? Mm-hmm. I'm going to say the largest audience you have in your company is the number of people trying to consume the viewer, the consumer of the content. So my opinion here is, I think you start focusing, if I can't do everything at once.
Right.
Unless you hire some outside help to kind of come in and like lay it all out for you. Like, you don't know what you don't know is what I'm trying to say. So if you're an individual who's kind of leading the helm of Power BI and you're just starting this thing out in your organization, maybe you're migrating from another tool into Power BI and you're trying to figure out what are the feature gaps, how we're going to rebuild, because every tool does things a little bit different. Tableau, Click, they all operate differently than how you deploy and distribute content. So you have to kind of take this lens of what does my company understand? And my guess is, this is a very sweeping guess, there's a lot of people who just consume content. Give me my report, give me my table, and I'll take it from there. So I think the consumer education points that it makes here in the article are the ones you should address first. How do you get help? Where is the office hours for the Center of Excellence or the team of people who understand how to use this report? What does it mean? How do I filter this data? I'm missing data in this report. How do I unfilter it? I think you have to cover those basic functionalities first, just from a consumer standpoint, because that means you now drive a need to have more content created. And I think behind that, you follow it with, okay, now that you're supporting the content you're building, here's a bunch of apps that we've created. Here's a bunch of reports in those apps. Once the organization starts getting established on this is how our data is presented back to us, then you start focusing on, okay, now let's start scaling up the amount of content we can create and highlighting certified or promoted content based on focusing your attention now down to the creator support. So yeah. I think it has to go consumer, creator for that reason, because you're trying to drive the largest amount of impact. And just from a pure audience size, you're going to probably have, and this is a generalization, there are organizations that have everyone creating content. So I'm saying this is just from my observation. There's a lot more content consumers than there are creators. And so therefore, to address the need of the business, you want to first get everyone able to consume content, drill throughs, pages, reports, visuals, how to interact with visuals, all of the things, get that settled first, at least enough to get people consuming it. Watch your metrics and usage. If that starts upticking, then you'll start having more requests for getting more content. And now you start focusing on, okay, let's focus on how do we have a central team or a small team of people building content. How do we start opening that realm up and getting more people into the content creator space?
So but that's hard. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's like you just went into a use case of an all-in self-service deployment methodology, didn't you? Like that.
No,
it sounds like
and I wildly disagree with you.
Yeah,
I don't think
because
so.
If I'm your own team, if I'm a one-person team or a small team,
yep,
right. It depending on what your responsibilities are as a business intelligence team, the instant you go all out and you're like, hey, everybody in the organization, we're here to support you. Here's all the training material that we built here. Like, let alone like that's what you're now assuming is part of your responsibilities. Here we are. And then the deluge of incoming stuff comes and you can't support it. You will lose the opportunity with that audience, which is everybody in the business, to work with them because they'll be like, yeah, we pinged them and they're not responding.
I feel like your comment there is a little nuclear to what's going on here, because I don't think it has to be. You're saying
I am kind of that nuclear kind of guy.
Yeah, you're kind of going nuclear on the option of I'm not interpreting my comment as, hey, I'm going to launch all this content, expect every user in the company to consume the reports that we're going to be building. Likely this, and what I observe here is it usually starts with a couple key groups. Executives need their reports. They have their KPIs. You start with them. So there's a narrow focused amount of people that are there's content being
announcing that to particular groups as you roll things out.
But that scales larger. I mean, it's not. I'm not going to release everything in one moment. To your point, right? You have to have some level of support for all these things, but. What I'm trying to adjust here is, regardless of whether you take it team by team, whether you take it the whole company or not the whole company, whatever you do, you always have to start with educating the consumer of the content first, because whatever you built in that report has to be educated or documented enough to get them going.
So here's where I'm gonna.
I disagree with you on this one. You're not going to get any success if you just start lifting up reports.
I haven't said a point yet.
No, I'm arguing with Seth.
Okay, gotcha.
Tommy, Seth is telling me no right up front, and I have yet to see any implementations where you haven't started with consumer training first to get into the content creator support.
But that is the fault. That is the assumption that the organization itself is making this an initiative within the organization. Right? Because what is required for you to support that is putting together the resources to support the organization. What I hear you saying is blindly, this is where we go right off the bat. And it's like, no, not without proper planning of or understanding the number or level of effort, number of resources or level of effort it's going to take to support all of the things that you're now opening the door to. And it's like, I'm much more in line with like, okay, do it phased in terms of like department by department. But at the same time, like there's going to be a threshold if you're not thinking about that long term. And yes, I do have a nuclear approach from the standpoint that I've been in organizations where teams find themselves absolutely overwhelmed and the organization looking at them going, why aren't you delivering? And this is in part of that problem where you're just launching things into an ether without an understanding of the level of effort that you're launching out there that the team is now going to have to embrace and support across the organization.
I feel like you're making my point stronger, actually, while you're arguing this. Just because you're launching content there to begin with, right? What you just said in that statement was your team, there are teams that are unprepared to handle the onslaught of support from the content that they have created.
Yeah.
That's because that's phase one of that team creating the content to begin with. There has to be some level of education to that consumer of the content. So even before you're
missing my point. You're missing my point. I'm saying there is a finite team that is building all of the content to support an audience. I'm saying I have to understand the volume of what that audience is going to put back on my team, especially in self-service, in order to support that. Because if I don't, say for instance this, right? I've got a team of 4. We've deployed content to 100 people in the organization. 20 of those people don't do anything. 80% are extremely interested in everything you have to say, Mike. 80 people start coming in with different questions. And all of a sudden, the team of 5 is like, the volume here is crazy. We can't support all this.
Pause. What you just said there sounds to me like consumer support. What you just said, not creator support.
You're saying consumer support. That's where you said start.
Yes. This is what you're just explaining to me.
But here's what I'm saying. I can't go to that 100 unless I start to understand the levels of support that would be required. Because here's my pushback.
I think we're saying the same thing.
No, because 80 people are asking something. What's going to happen is that we have to create a backlog. Now, all of a sudden, those 80 people filter down to 40. I've lost 40 because I'm not answering them quick enough. I'm not giving them, I'm not supporting them.
You're making my point.
40. Now I'm down to 30. Now I'm down to 20. No, I'm saying you can't start there immediately or just launch out because you're going to lose 60% of your audience right out of the gate.
I agree with you. I agree. You have just confirmed my assumption of when you as an organization are making this, the first thing you start with is consumer support, not creator support. You're not talking about in the example you gave me, you didn't talk about you're not talking about how am I publishing new content. You're not talking about how do I update security, and you're not talking about how do I access new functionality of reports or Power BI or Fabric.com. Those are things of creator support. You're affirming my point where you have to have a clear understanding of what's happening at the consumer level. To use your example, I'm publishing a report and I'm giving it to 80 people. That is consumer support. How do I use this report? How do I get this data? That is all consumer-based reporting support that you have to plan for before you're planning for how do we build the best models? How do we build the best pages? How do we best articulate those business requirements into report? You affirmed my point, which the consumer report is higher importance than your creator support.
Hold on.
For planning or implementing.
Well, the content consumer support says this in the article. It says the questions they're trying to address is how to get help. How will the consumer contact who and what for help? Is there a strategy for read-only customers? Is there a workflow for consumers? Are you addressing critical issues that block productivity? These are all the things you're talking about. How do you resolve data discrepancies? These are questions that are coming from the consumer. This is consumer support. How do you use the solution? If you send it out to 80 people, to your point, and they don't know how to find the data, get through the pages, use the filter pane navigation, they can't even use the solution. And the onslaught of 80 people's questions are those kinds of questions. If we haven't thought about that content consumer support first, you lose them. And I agree with you. If you do not want to roll out something and have 80 people come at you with questions and not being able to support it and then losing half your audience because they're like, well, this report's junk. The data doesn't look right. I don't know how to get to it. I don't have access to what I think I need to have access to. You lose the momentum immediately when you're trying to roll this out. And then the last part here, which I think is also very relevant, is how do you accept that feedback? When the consumers, those 80 people come back to you and you're not either able to track and address those tickets quick enough, what are you doing to resolve this? Oh, this data was issued. Okay, we've taken on a task, to your point, going back to the data set and fixing it or providing more reporting to say these numbers in fact are correct and they do align to our KPIs. I think you're affirming what we're talking about here.
Hold on. Everything you're saying, Mike, from a consumer point of view, I'm your number one fan. However, where I think the disconnect is, if you from the start know you're going to be supporting content creators who become your representative of the content, because the BI team is not the sole people creating reports. If they don't have the proper knowledge, experience, skill, and understand resources needed, you have a lot of disconnect before you even get to the consumers. If the plan is going to be managed self-service at scale, I'm not saying after the fact. I'm saying part of the initial idea of rolling out content and supporting content, you already know that we're going to have a wide web of content creators. You have to start there because they're your representatives. They're the ones creating reports. And what do you get if you don't have the proper processes and resources for them? A Wild West, a lot of different looking reports. And I almost use a different word there. But you have a lot of disconnect on the type of content out there before it even touches the consumers. Now, this is all being said with the idea that I completely agree with everything you said about content support. And again, you and I share that same passion on the importance there. But if you are doing managed self-service at scale and you know that before you launch, then your first focus needs to be pilots, need to be working with these people so they become valid representations. They're not presenting wrong data. They're presenting consistent looking reports. They're doing drill through right because they're going to be the ones creating it for their teams, not you, not your team, because they're the tentacles. They're the webs of report creation. So
but I would still argue you're talking about phase 2 of something, because if those content creators don't even know, if the consumer of that content, right? If you have a team of people who are going to be building things, if the people you're giving those reports to don't even understand how to use a drill through, you've already lost.
But we have
before you've even talked to the training of the content creators.
But you don't control who you get in terms of consumer or creator, right? Like as part of an organization, you'll have both at the same time.
Agreed.
Right? Now, in terms of planning, right? There's a large volume of work to build documentation or repositories of information for a consumer to ensure that you have self-service success in the consumer space. So they're like already you're at a finite amount of time. And I guess that's where I still would argue, like if you're going to approach the data initiatives and improving the data culture, regardless of like utilizing Fabric, right? We can build a bunch of objects. We can, create value for the business through reports and insights, et cetera. To me, it's both of those at the same time. But it's small. You keep it small because you're limited to what you can support. And if we're saying the same thing in just saying like you have to plan for this first before you start rolling things out, then I would agree with you. If you're not saying that and you're saying we start and we roll these things out, that's what I was disagreeing with.
I'm saying the former of what you're saying, right? In both cases, you have to plan for these things. I'm just saying when you start, you have to have these things both played out. So what I'm not trying to say is we don't ever teach anyone how to create content and we just start rolling things out. And then what we've rolled out, we just train them really well and it'll go well. That's not what I'm trying to communicate. In both these situations, they have to happen in parallel at the same time. My point is, as you're getting Power BI to roll out to the organization, people just don't know how to use PowerBI.com, where to find the content, how to use things that you built in the report. And reports can be highly customized, meaning there can be flyout panels, there can be buttons. What do these things do? I have seen a very large hesitation for people. I don't want to break it. If you don't tell me what to do in the report, I don't know how to use it. And so to me, it feels like there's a very large emphasis on if you want to provide those quick wins of satisfactions, you start with a small creator team with a very lightweight processes around the creator side. But your first major effort should be around what are we going to create, and how do we make sure that the people consuming that content get the support they need to be able to use that content in the way they need.
Those creators, where are they coming from? The business, or are they coming from the centralized BI team? Because that's really it. Even if it's a small team and it's from the business, that's self-service, and that's your support first.
It's going to depend on how your company handles this stuff. So the answer, there is no, it comes from one place, because some businesses are going to say, we're just going to open up Power BI and everyone can create. Well, then it's going to be more self-service in nature, because it's business-led driven as opposed to central BI driven. And a lot of companies have these kind of, it depends on what your strategy is. Is there a executive sponsor involved? Do we have a good culture around data already? I mean, I've seen organizations that just, because they have an E5 license, everyone creates things in Power BI Pro licenses. And we have hundreds, if not thousands, of report across the organization. And central BI has no clue what's happening. They don't even know what's going on, because people are just doing things. Not even kidding you. I've been in organizations where this is occurring.
Seriously.
Then your role here is just training. You've got to get.
Then your role is updating your resume. Yeah.
But my point is, there's organizations have different cultures and they handle these situations differently. And it really depends on, was there someone up front that understood the ability of controlling Power BI and had a plan, or did we just say, this is useful, let's just turn it on? So it really is, are we coming down, and this is very clearly laid out in the Power BI adoption roadmap, are we coming in with a central BI standpoint, it's corporate down, or are we coming from the business unit level up? And there's a blend here. And my recommendation is a mixed approach, right? It's a federated approach. There's some people from the business and there's some people from central IT, and they're working together to build a better, broader ecosystem around central BI or reporting in general, right? It doesn't have to be centralized. I think with Fabric adding to this, we add more insult to injury with this one, because now we have a lot of traditional only IT-based things, pipelines, notebooks, data engineering, the lake houses, all these other SQL servers, all those things were typically purview of only central IT, because you got to go ahead and provision them in Azure, and it costs you money. Yep. Now I can get myself a Fabric license and turn a lot of this stuff on without needing them. And so this is democratizing the ability to do these things. So I 100% agree. There needs to be a huge amount of effort also thinking about who are your creators and making sure they're creating good stuff to actually add value, as opposed to just creating crap and getting out the door.
Yeah. And my last point I'll say on this area is this. I think a lot of this comes from what your executive sponsor wants. If they want this managed self-service at scale, right? Rather than a pick and choose self-service, where it comes to not just where your support is lying, but where you start with. Because again, if I'm doing self-service at scale, a lot of times BI is doing a lot of data modeling, semantic modeling, and then report creation is connecting those certified semantic models. The BI team may not be doing as much report creation. And if they are, it's more universal across department. Teams doing a lot report creation off of a semantic model. And again, we could get into the weeds here, so I'm trying to stay as general as possible, because there's obviously a lot of use cases. But self-service at scale, I need to set them up for success first, and that would be my last touch point there.
I guess we were right on the money right in the beginning with, one, how the article is laid out, but two, that a lot of this is people and process, right? Because the first two areas are, consumers and creators, right? And that's where you'll have the most ambiguity of, like, how do you go about supporting those teams and ensuring you can, I think, which is where a lot of my stress is, because and that's just because on the other side of that, if you do it wrong, that's where you may lose the ability to get everyone or a larger audience to adapt. In the last 5 minutes, whatever, though, let's talk about monitoring. And there are some really key things, and typically for the admins, typically for the centralized teams, to ensure these operational systems are operating as they should, or find problems before they become very big. What are some key areas you guys think are important to talk through?
This is a topic I've discussed at length. Is what is your measurement of success look like, and what are the KPIs that you're using to measure what you're doing in your environment, right? So there's many different KPIs. I'm just going to throw out a couple KPIs that I've used that resonates with organizations. They have a great outline here: access of solution adoption, understanding published items, reduce your risks, find performance and health concerns within the system, right? These are great data points. So some KPIs I would look at this. One is everyone knows the understanding of, does my report get views? How many report views am I getting? Easy, not a problem. One that is, I think, less thought about is talking about performance and or reducing risks in your organization. You want to look at how many times people are exporting to Excel within your organization. Which reports are causing a lot of export to Excel data points? This is something that's a data point that's not very well known in the organizations. And if I talk to orgs, they don't understand this number or the impact of this capability. So for one, that's important to understand where and who is doing those type of activities, because that could be a very big data security risk where you think you're putting data into Power BI, everyone's exporting it out and either emailing it around or doing something else with it that you're not expecting. So there's a behavioral item there that I think is important. Another KPI that I think is very relevant is your report to data set ratio, especially on your certified versus non-certified content. If you have a 1-to-1 ratio of every data set has a single report, you have a problem with reusability of content. You're not best utilizing common things, and you likely are, with that metric alone, you're probably having performance issues or will have performance issues in the future because you're now refreshing the same dimension or the same factual information multiple times. And your organization will now uptick a spend amount. I will spend more because I need multiple refreshes of the same kind of content. So again, that's a huge performance indicator of, do you have 6, 7, 8 reports per data set? So that's another one here. And the last one I'll point out here that I think is very relevant is understanding the mix of consumption of your certified content and your non-certified content. I think there's a lot of content that's being created by users that are adding great value that should be in the certified realm. And you need to have a conversation, a plan. What does this look like? And if we're talking ownership of that information, right? A lot of Power BI is, we now have so much more surface area to control who owns what data. Because of that, we need to have plans on certifying or bringing content into a place where we can trust it. So I really emphasize this certified content because that's where we should spend a lot of our time and effort, is making sure certified content is being used well. Those are a couple of KPIs. There's many more, but that's just kind of my initial thought.
And I think that's a perfect point to touch on, Mike, because I think part of that data culture too is how fluid your data is. Because if you do have everything set up in something, I always ask everyone, please have your scanner API, please have your audit log set up before you launch, because we need these numbers. Your data becomes much more fluid, because then you could have conversations on, hey, what's being used a ton? Is there a conversation here to certify this? Is there a conversation here to upgrade or upscale this data? It's getting used by everyone. There's the conversations on, no one from executive or leadership's looking at the data they should be. Let's have a conversation here with them. Let's do a training or support that we talked about. The numbers here, it's amazing how ironic it is that so many organizations don't use their numbers of BI from Scanner API and the audit log to dictate a lot what they do. It's always support requests. It's always support requests. It's always support requests. But that may not be what the data is telling them. And so I'll touch on the usage log or the audit log. This is integral to our monitoring content. It will go into retirement, which will be our next part here, but it also goes into, again, where's the data going to live? Is this a good candidate to be more self-service? Is this a good candidate to be more certified? Based on who's using it, how often they are using it, where that has to be part of the strategy, and to make your data more fluid or liquid.
Yeah, I think where I'd lean with a lot of the monitoring that I like, table stakes to me is just how report usage, right? How the platform is in terms of capacity planning. Where I've experienced the most amount of time being sucked away from teams is in the data monitoring, and that's going to be different. And in Fabric, that ecosystem is all encompassing, but having something that is monitoring your data source And that's just like, you can do volume checking, right? Like, here are my expected volumes. Am I in the range for today? All the way down to very specific business logic and rules, like you're looking for values that are coming in and ensuring that something didn't go blank, right? Because the impact of that downstream could be significant in terms of reporting. Pipeline and kind of query performance and monitoring of that is pivotal to systems working and operating the way that they should, especially with a whole bunch of data flowing in different places all day, in many different ways, could impact when, people are seeing stale data in reports. And then that kind of rolls into some of the back ends of the report experience in constantly monitoring your model performance, and your refreshes, to understand whether or not you have a change in data that is affecting some of the architecture of your solution, right? Where maybe, maybe you need a new index on the back end, or potentially something changed and now a measure is bogging everything down every time a user is using that. So a lot of focus more in the understanding the data movement within the platform and where you put the monitoring pieces in there, I think has been pivotal in communicating the challenges and where they can lie within a lot of these data pipelines that affect the end result, which is the report, right? Because everybody, whether it's a consumer, like on the consumer side, will always say something's wrong with the report. And the data owners know that it could be at any layer, and the faster you can get to the layer to find a solution, it allows you to rip through the bug or the support much faster.
Seth, and I know we're getting your time, but your point there, I think, just really proves to our conversation today, where really once you decide whether you're looking at the content, the consumer or the content creators, both the roads divert pretty drastically, because you're talking a lot about honestly content creators monitoring, and the usage metrics is looking a lot about the consumer monitoring. There are different processes, not just for the support, but really different processes and methods for content creator monitoring and consumer monitoring that we're talking about here too.
Well, I think that's where the opportunity with Fabric is such that you can take a lot of the comments I made, which are more central BI team building, and implement them for content creators so they can triage their own issues as well.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. This, I think, round up very well at the end here. I really like this idea of monitoring content. And I will argue Microsoft has not done a great job of giving you ample KPIs, access to data elements, so you can collect this stuff holistically and make your own reports around this one. So I really do feel like you either need to go buy a solution off the shelf or get access. I have built my own solution off our shelf and we sell it to customers. It is leaps and bounds ahead of what you need to do. Every time I have a question about my tenant, I go to my set tables that I've already built. I can ask questions about that data. I can quickly get a inventory of all the data sources that have been used in my tenant, who's creating what, where content's coming from, how it's being exported. These KPIs, I think, are things that we need to be focusing on. And we really need to start centralizing and focusing our attention to this is important, that we build solutions that are more easily understanding all the great richness of the APIs that we provide to our organization, that, basically for monitoring things. So the last thing I'll note on this too as well is anytime you're building owners or data stewards in departments or teams, whatever you decide on your auditing monitoring solution, you should think about how do you build it in a way that distributes that content to other data owners or stewards in your organization. One thing I've been studying right now has been the use of domains and how domains can allow departments to self-certify their own data. Finance, there's a person in finance who's the lead in finance department. Identify who that admin is or the owner of that department. Give them domain ownership. Let them manage their own workspaces. Delegate some of those administrative privileges to them. Allow them to self-certify their own data sets. But then Central BI or the Center of Excellence needs to define what does certified mean? What does that quality mean at that level? And then work with the different teams to integrate that into their processes. So I think there's a lot of really rich features here that are being underutilized, domains being one of them, to help delegate the responsibility to other content creators, which I think is very relevant here too. Super great article. At the very end of the article, there's a nice checklist. Assess how you how user support is handled. You determine some specific data needs, all that great stuff. So I really, really like the end of the article. So definitely take a good look at the checklist at the bottom, read through those items, and see if you're prepared for being able to support your organization with your monitoring around your content. Extremely great conversation. I hope you liked our fight in the middle of getting a little bit heated.
I love how you think these are heated.
Well, I know.
I felt like we were doing a good job hashing out ideas here. I think we were saying the same thing, but I felt it was good having some good discussion in the middle
passion. There. It's called passion.
We are passionate.
It was so nice to monitor or watch the passion for once and not be a part of it.
Yes. I had to say an amazing job from our listeners today. Everyone who jumped in the chat thread was giving a lot of great ideas. Really appreciated your input here. That was a lot of great comments. So chat, thank you very much for doing that. Our only request here is if you like this content, if you like hearing us argue about things, please share it with somebody else. Let them have angst about their Power BI deployment as well. Give them some things to think about around deployment and monitoring. With that, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps out a ton. If you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast, leave your name and a great question. Join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all Power BI Tips social media channels.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.